There are many strange happenings in the wild country of British Columbia, and none more so than the singular event of coming into contact with a Sasquatch. In the indigenous tongue of a native people, the males are known as the Bukwas, and the females are named Sanakwa. The people who seek them out are known as Sasquatch researchers, and the following reports are from the files of one such man, Canada's preeminent Sasquatch researcher and seeker of the truth, Thomas Steenburg.
Okay, I figure we'll start today off with number 19 of my old Alberta files, known as the Bear Spa Report. This occurred in the small little hamlet of Bear Spa, Alberta, which was at that time a small little hamlet northwest along the banks of the Bow River, northwest of Calgary, Alberta. But in 1978, this couple, who I later met and interviewed, in company with researcher Robert Alley from Alaska. It's one of 2 times Robert Alley accompanied me to a witness interview. And by that time, they had left Bear Spa because even back then, they said the city was getting too close, so they decided to move to Cochrane. And that's where we interviewed them in their house in Cochrane, also off the road. Now, I'll just read from my file report, Alberta Report 50019, in other words, the 19th incident I looked into when I started in Alberta. And I'll read directly from the file. If this particular were to occur today, it would be amazing. Not only is the area just outside Calgary city limits, but it's also only about 2 hours walk from my house. That was the case then when I made this file report. Anne and her son, Timothy Thomas, phoned me from their Cochrane home to tell me of an incident they had when they were living in Bear Spa. As I told you, a small community hamlet just northwest of Calgary along the banks of the Bow River. Mm-hmm. They told me they were willing to be interviewed. So Robert Alley and myself drove to their Cochrane to talk to the Thomas family. I first interviewed Anne Thomas. Please state your full name. Celesta Ann Thomas. Question, where did this incident occur? Answer, between Calgary and Cochrane, approximately 3 miles northwest of Calgary. Question, what date did this take place? I believe it was 1978, but when I think on it, it could have been still 1977. Question, describe the area in which it took place. It was on the road leading down towards the river, coming from sort of the back trail, which nobody used, at least not often. Question, what distance would you estimate you were from this creature? Oh, I don't know, 1/8 of a mile, maybe less. Question, what was your first reaction? Answer, I just tried to figure out what it was. At first, I thought it might be a man with a backpack, or a man carrying a large sack, or one of the local boys going home, maybe with pocket equipment. But it was too squared. What was it doing? Answer. It was walking very swiftly, and it disappeared from sight in a matter of seconds. Its hands were not moving, what I mean, not swaying. And it was very squared, and it seemed to be covered with black fur, and it had a very sturdy legs. Question, did it stand and walk on 2 legs? Answer, it was on 2 legs, fully erect. Question, did you ever see it go down on all 4s? Answer, no. Question, was it covered in hair? Answer, I thought it was black hair. Question, how tall would you estimate the subject to have been? Answer, well, approximately, pause here, she's thinking, 7 feet. Yeah, 7, maybe a little bigger. It was definitely taller than a man. Question, What would you estimate its weight to have been? Answer, oh my goodness. Remember, she put her hand to her cheek and I only saw the back of it. Then I broke in with another question. Did it seem to you to be very heavy or light? Answer, well, its legs, seemed to be double the size of a man. I imagine he was very heavy, maybe 300 pounds. Question, do you see any facial features? Answer, no. Question, could you describe the arms? The arms were straight down. They were much bigger than a man's, and they did not swing that much when it was walking. Question, could you tell if it was male or female? Answer, no. Question, how long did you see this thing for? Answer, I would say, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. Question, did it ever make any noise? Answer, no, I heard no noise. But the smell was terrible. And she basically answered a question before I asked it right there. Question, did the creature see you? Answer, I don't believe so. It might have, since the dog was scared. It might have been around the house for all I know. Question, after the creature moved off, did you check for footprints? Answer, no, I was afraid. And my son didn't want to either. Question, did you report what you saw to the police? Answer, no, because I thought it would be laughed at. Question, did you report this to anyone else? Answer, just family members. All I got was, they all got a big kick out of it. Question, in your own words, describe what happened. Well, the dog started to whimper outside. So I figured that some of the other dogs were picking on him. I went out and he was under the porch whimpering, and the way I never heard him whimper before. Then the odor struck me. It was awful. So I called to my son, and we got the dog out, and then went on with whatever we were doing. I went over to the French windows, and I noticed that it was starting to snow. And then I noticed this thing walking in the direction of the river. And that would take him across Bear's Paw Road. Like in that area down in the Transcattle, my son and I asked, could you see the back sack on his back? Because it looked very big. My son said it looks like too big to be a man. So I looked hard at it. And it looked like a black animal fur. His legs were very, very stocky, and it took big steps. It was very squared on the upper body area, and it just walked out of sight. Now, Robert Alley, who's a bit of an artist, did a witness sketch based on what we were told during this interview. I'll just show you his drawing right here. That's basically what the interview, based on the witness of Anne and her son. That's what the thing looked like, according to them. Now, I did interview the son as well, separately from his mother. And you got to forgive me, the pages are getting to stick a little bit because I think this is the first time I've opened this file in like 15 years. Next, I interviewed Timothy Thomas in a different room from his mother, Anne. Timothy's statement was a little different.
Now, was his name Timothy or Jim?
I think his name is Timothy Jim Thomas. At the time, they wanted their identity kept confidential, but that has since passed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just curious.
Yeah. I interviewed Timothy Thomas in a different room from his mother, Anne. State your full name. Timothy Patrick Thomas. Where did this incident occur? Answer, Bearspaw. What date did this take place? November 1978. Or, wait a minute, it could have been 79. Nope, 78. Was the sighting at night or day? At night. Question, what time of night? Answer, about 10 p.m. Describe the area in which this incident took place. Answer, suitable grass, flat area, hilly in some spots, sparsely treed. Question, what distance would you estimate you were from the subject when you saw it? Answer, about 200 yards. Question, what was your first reaction? Answer, big, very big. Kind of misunderstanding the question there. Question, what was it doing? Answer, it was walking. Question, did it stand and walk upright? Answer, it walked on two legs with the upper part of the torso slightly haunched. Question, did it ever go down all fours? Answer, no. Was it covered in hair? Answer, it appeared to be. Question, what color was it? Answer, black. Question, how tall would you estimate this thing to have been? Answer, about 6.5, maybe to 7 feet tall. Question, what would you estimate its weight to have been? I don't know, 280 pounds, somewhere around there. I think that personally, I think they're grossly underestimating its weight. Question, did you see any facial features? Answer, no. Question, can you describe its arms? Answer, well, the arms hung at its side, and he sort of trailed off there. Question, could you see if it was male or female? Answer, no. Question, how long did you see it for? Answer, 2 minutes, thereabouts. A little different from his mother. She said about 5 minutes. Question, did it make any noise? Answer, no. Question, did it see you? Answer, not to my knowledge. Yeah. Question, did it smell? He said, yes, before and during. Question, can you describe it? Answer, no, I really can't describe it. Question, was it bad? Answer, worse than sulfur. Question, after it moved off, did you check for footprints? Answer, no. Question, did you report what you saw to the police? Answer, no. Question, did you report it to anyone? Answer, no. Again, in your own words, describe what happened. Well, it's around 10 p.m. My mother and I were sitting in the house when the dog started to bark. I went outside to see what the problem was. He was a guard dog, so he only barks when something's in the yard. I went out on the porch to calm him down, and the dog shot into the house whimpering. I started to smell this stench, and I looked across the road, and I saw this huge figure. I knew that it was big, too big to be a person. I went back into the house and to the front porch, and we watched it walk in a southward direction towards the river. Question, did you see it first, or did your mother? Answer, I did. That directly contradicts what she said. But maybe she just didn't notice him see it first. I don't know. Question, and you told her and she came out to watch it with you? Answer, yes. I got the impression when interviewing the mother it was the other way around, but okay. There are discrepancies in Timothy's version of what happened when he compared to his mother. For instance, they both claim to have seen it first. And through the French windows, Timmy from outside. And said the dog was under the porch and that she went outside to see what was wrong with it. Timmy said he went outside to see what was wrong with the dog, and he made no mention of the dog being under the porch. And said the dog was whimpering while Timothy says the dog was barking. Well, at least he said it was barking at first. As for the creature, Timothy says the torso was slightly hot as the creature walked, and says that it stood quite erect. Both agreed that the colored creature was jet black, and that it walked away from them in the southwest direction towards the river. And as I said before, Robert Alley drew this diagram and this little map at the time we were there. You see that very well.
Yeah. And
that basically is what happened on November 1978, Bearspaw, Alberta, file 50019, the 19th incident I looked at.
So Thomas, now that this is 40 years old, thinking back on it, do you think that I'm not saying they didn't see anything, but do you think it was the mother who actually saw it and the son was just getting in on the attention? Or because the mother seemed to give more positive answers and he seemed to be a little vague on what he knew and what he saw, and compared to her.
I know, I think my personal opinion is that's a possibility, but I generally think they both did see it. They just weren't paying attention to what each other was doing at the time. Until they got back in the house and both watched it walk off. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can
think.
See that.
It may have been under the porch when Anne went out, and then it was on the porch and running inside when he came out.
That's right, because I wondered about the discrepancy. She says hiding and whining. He says out front and barking. Yeah. So which is it? So
they've been both.
It could have been both. No law says it couldn't be both. Yeah. Well, folks, if you think that is a little bit confusing, wait till later on when we do the Crandall campground and you've got a number of people giving reports about the same incident at the same time.
Yeah. I remember at the time of the bear spot incident that the witnesses did not wish to be identified. And the only reason that is changed now, as far as I know, she has passed away for some years now.
Yeah.
And I have no idea where he is.
How did you first hear about this?
They contacted me.
Oh, and yeah. How long after the incident was that?
Well, I think I interviewed them in 1981.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, was it when they got a hold of you, was it a week old or was it a 2-week-old tale or was it years old?
Well, according to them, it happened in November of either 1978 or 79.
Oh. So that was...
Matter of fact, I remember sitting down there, they're trying to figure out, was it 78 or 79? And it was November and early November and just between Halloween and Remembrance Day. And there hadn't been that much snow yet, which is rather odd in Calgary, because I remember quite a few Halloweens in Calgary was minus 22 with 5 feet of snow on the ground.
Uh-huh.
Quite a few where they were just as warm and nice as they are here. It was always a flip of the coin which way it would be. And they kind of concluded at the end of the interview that it probably happened in 1978.
Well, that's interesting. Especially what's interesting is that you say that Bear's Paw is just practically a subdivision of Calgary.
Yeah, it may even be. If you look at
it, probably is.
Yeah, it's been overrun by Calgary. Like Calgary, even back when I was there, I left Calgary and Alberta in general in 2002 to move here to the West Coast. And back then, Bearspaw, the city, was just seemed to be coming closer and closer and closer every year. You know, the urban neighborhoods.
Sure. sprawl.
Instead of a nice farmhouse every couple of kilometers, you had a wall and it almost looked like an advance.
Yeah.
And they're just getting closer and closer and closer. Back in 78, they were still a little farther away, but it may even be overrun now. Now, it could be that the cities only came up to a certain point and continue to expand northward. I don't know. It does look like it's still, Bear Spa itself is still, according to Google Maps, is basically sagebrush country.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing from listening to these reports in Alberta. My son lives in Calgary with his family, so it's going to make visits there all that more interesting now that I have all these names bouncing around in my head of these different areas where there's been reports. And hey, son, how would you like to go for our drive in the country? Hey. We're going to go east, and we're going to go north, and then we're going to go south, and I got places I want to see. Yeah. So, okay, that's that one, and we'll be back in a moment with another report from the Steenburg Chronicles. Stand by. Okie doke.
Now, this next Alberta file is number 50092. In other words, Alberta Incident 92, which is one of the last ones I ever looked into in the province of Alberta. And it occurred long after I had left Alberta. So I sort of heard about this secondhand. The following report was forwarded to me by one Cliff Barackman of, you well know, Searching for Bigfoot fame.
Yep, Cliff and Cliff and Bobo.
Yeah, location is the Bow Valley Campground, north bank of the Bow River near Exshaw, Alberta. The date this occurred was May 2011. The time was approximately 8:45 p.m. The following report was forwarded to me by Cliff Brackman. The witness had submitted the report to Cliff's webpage, and it took a while to contact him as he was on vacation with his family to British Columbia for a few weeks, the witness in this case. So he did not hear my phone message for him for some time. He called me on the night of May the 6th, 2013. I made arrangements to interview him over the telephone the following evening. The witness did express the desire to remain confidential, so only his initials will appear in this report. And I'm assuming that it still stands, so the witness will remain confidential. The first question, could you state your full name for me? Answer, withheld from report, initially used AV, Alpha Victor. What is your present mailing address? Answer, not going to tell you, withheld from report. What is your phone number? I asked. He told me, but I'm not going to tell you. What is your occupation, Alpha Victor? I work for Mercedes-Benz Parts Department. Are you former military, aren't you? Answer, yes. What branch of the military?
Here it comes.
Army, 2nd Battalion, PPCLI. That's Prince Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. Good.
Remember that, folks. You'll be asked questions later.
Yeah. Do you wear corrective lenses? Occasionally, for reading. Answer. Were you wearing them at the time of this incident? Yes. What was your age at the time of the incident? I would have been 30. Please tell me what happened. Now, you notice later on, I asked that question at the beginning of the interview rather at the end, like I did in the previous Bear Spa interview. Basically, what happened is we went out camping. It was the first time we had gone camping that year. We had gone to the campground Saturday morning. We spent the day there. we, did the typical camping things, walking the dog, had lunch. We had just finished up for dinner, and we decided to go down for a walk by the river. We were just kind of walking along the bank for a bit, not paying much attention to anything. The sun had just gone behind the mountains, which is why we decided to start heading back. I took the dog down to the edge of the river. And when she got down there, she just started staring across the river. I didn't think much of it at this point. Told her to get her drink, hurry up. She kept staring across the river, and then all of a sudden the hair on her back started to bristle. I looked over and couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. She is still intently staring across. So I kind of got on top of her and put my head on top of her head so I could see in the direction she was looking at. Very military minded. Then I saw this large mass across the river. It was 150, 130 yards away from us. I originally didn't know whether it was a large bear or a rock because it wasn't moving. Then after about 30 seconds of looking at it, I bent down to the dog and told her, come on, let's go. And looked up again, and that's when I saw it stand up. It stood up and took a step to its, would have been to its left, kind of pivoted. It took 3 more steps into the tree line. It was 3 distinct steps I saw. And when it went into the tree line, into the shadows, it just blended so well into the shadows of the trees, I could not see it anymore. Question, where did this incident occur? Answer, Bow Valley Campground, which is Bow Valley Provincial Park, just east of Canmore, Alberta, just off the Trans-Canada Highway. It's right on the Bow River. Question, do you near the old cement plant on the river, right? He goes, yes, just down the river a little bit. And I have a Steenburg note here. Cement plant is kind of an eyesore as you drive along the Trans-Canada Highway. It lies on the north bank of the river along Route 1A. While the Trans-Canada Highway is running along the river's south bank. The plant was a small community called Exshaw. Most of the population works at the plant. Question, what date did this take place? Answer, we always go camping, it was the weekend before the May long weekend, Victoria Day long weekend. The weekend before that. I think it would have been May 10th or 11th. A Saturday before the long weekend. It was the first weekend we go camping. Steenburg note here. In his report to Cliff Brackman, he wrote May 14th. At this point, he starts to go into details which have not been asked yet. He continues. When I first saw it, like sometimes you notice a witness tends to want to give an answer before you answer it. I mean, he wants to get this out. When I first saw it, I know it wasn't, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't think much of it. My thought of the situation, it wasn't possible because there are none Sasquatch in backgrounds. In other words, he says he didn't believe in Sasquatch. He wouldn't even consider the possibility. In Alberta, there's more in BC and Washington, Oregon, right? So I didn't make a report at the time. It was later on that year that I actually reading through the paper came across this article about one Todd Standing and his accounts and everything, and looked at his research and what he was and was not doing. And I saw, so whatever. I put this whole thing by the wayside for a bit. It was possibly close to the year after I saw it, I started talking a little bit about it. I made a report to another research people, and we did the interview and went on to the location. He told me there had been other activity in the area the same month reported by other people. Steenburg note. In his written report to Cliff Brackman, He wrote that a researcher from the BFRO named Gary Cron went with him to the location on June 2012. Question, what time of night did this occur? It was just after the sun went down, between 8 and 9 o'clock. The sun had been gone behind the mountain, and that's why we kind of were heading back. So it was still light enough that you could see, but there was no glow from the sun in the west direction. Describe the area which it took place. Just off the Bow River, fairly, well, as you know, it's a large river. Was it on the south bank or the north bank? We were on, I would say, east bank. It would have been on the west bank. Does the river run west to east at this point? Yes, it runs west to east. So was the subject on the north or south bank? Oh, okay. It would be on, I'm trying to think here. It would have been on the north bank. Steenburg, no. I think he's wrong here. The campground lies on the north bank of the Bow River. And he was looking at it, he said, across the river. So that means it would have been the south bank, which is where they were camping. And the subject was on the opposite bank and would have to have been on the south bank. So you're saying it was on the north bank? Yeah, I think so. Question, what distance would you estimate you were from the subject when you saw it? Oh, 150 to about 130 yards. Question, what color was it? I really couldn't get a color, not a specific color, but it was dark, but not really jet black. Possibly a very heavy dark brown. When I thought it was a grizzly, but it was darker than a grizzly. It wasn't a black bear. Way too big for a black bear. You know, a greyhound, there's a color which is called dun. I didn't know that.
I heard of that. I heard of
that.
Yeah,
which is gray with some brown mixed with it. It was similar to that. Question, what was your first impression of it? At first I thought, and when it was hunkered down, at first I thought it was either a rock or a grizzly bear. But it's when it stood up, that's when I was 100% sure I knew that what it wasn't. And I knew it wasn't a person just from the size of it. I know it wasn't a bear because a bear doesn't stand up on 2 feet and pivot that way and walk off clearly with a stride. How did you react when you first saw it? Shock, more or less. I was basically trying to process what this was. I just saw this and I can't explain what I saw. I felt no fear or excitement or anything like that. It was more, military, trying to evaluate situation surroundings. And I just tried to figure out what it was I saw. I really can't explain it. What was it doing? It was just bending down near the river. I don't know if it was digging in the river or bank, or as soon as when I was looking at it, there was no movement from it whatsoever. Then as I said, about 30 seconds, I turned around and went to grab my dog and looked away from it. And I looked back, and that's when it got up and moved. So I don't know if it noticed me way over there, or it was just standing, or I was just standing still, or it was just standing still. Then I broke looking at it, and when it decided to get up and move. Question, was it hairy? Answer, I really couldn't tell if it was hairy, but it was a solid color. Maybe 115 to 130 yards. I really couldn't distinguish hair. It wasn't skin, it wasn't clothing. But I can't really rule out that what it wasn't. I can't say with 100% certainty that it was hair. That kind of impressed me. How far do you think you were from it? 115 to 130 yards. Did Stan walk upright? Yes. Did you ever see it go down on all fours? No. How tall would you estimate it was? Well, based on the size, distance 7.5, I would say 7.5 foot range. Question, how much do you think it weighed? Answer, I would be about 500 pounds easily. Shoulder width, arm. Being in the military, you see guys at a distance walking with full rucksacks and gear, 130-pound geared kit on their back. That's not an exaggeration. I remember that. And the thing was bigger than that. Question, how long did you see it for? 30 seconds. When it was standing, and so when it was either squatting or sitting, 30 seconds while it was down by the river. And from the time it stood up and took those 3 steps in the bush, it was maybe 8 to 10 seconds. When it was down by the river, was it at the water's edge? Yes, right at the water's edge, yes. How far from the water's edge was the tree line? Oh, I didn't go over there, but I estimate maybe 10 yards. Did it see you? Answer, I think it did. So what was its reaction? I think its reaction was to stay as still as possible, which it did until I broke eye contact with it. And as soon as I did that, that's when it got up and moved to the bush. Could you see any facial features? Answer, no. Question, could you tell if it was male or female? Answer, no. Question, could you describe the arms? Answer, when it walked, it did have an arm swing. You could see that. You could see the motion. Question, did it make any noise? Answer, no, no noise. Question, did you smell anything before, during, or after? Answer, I didn't. I honestly think my dog might have, which might be why she was looking over there. Question, what breed's your dog? Answer, she's a greyhound. Question, how old? She would have been 3.5 when this happened. Question, did she bark or growl at the subject? No, not at all, which is strange for her. Question, are there any other physical characteristics of the subject which stand out in your memory? Answer, just the fact that when it did get up, it made a step with the left hand, the left leg, and it made a distinct pivot 180 degrees toward the tree line. Question, did you check for footprints later on? He said, no, I did not knowing what it was. Question, did you report this to anyone? I did report it to the BFRO. I talked to one of their representatives in the area here. We went out to the area where this happened, and he told me within a month and a half, there were 2 other sightings in the same area. Steenburg note. The BFRO researcher was one Gary Crone. At this time, I have no knowledge of the 2 other incidents he claimed to have mentioned here. The witness went on for some time here telling me how he went quiet for a time because he did some reading and research on his own and was doubting himself because he had seen some video footage from one Todd Standing. I doubt his doubt was from the fact that what he saw did not resemble the Standing footage. And as well as you know, I have a very good reason for believing why it didn't resemble whatever was filmed by Todd Standing. And I write right here, there's a good reason for that in my opinion. Yeah. Question, describe your general outdoor experience for me. Answer, I grew up camping, and we continue to camp now. We go out with the dog quite a bit. I was in the military, so I have outdoor training, survival training. You know how to act when you're confronted with different animals found in Canada. And this was nothing given to us, unrecognized animal in Canada. I can navigate topographically well. I can survive with limited supplies for quite some time. I am not outdoors a lot anymore, but when I get in the chance, we do go. Steenburg note, having served in the same regiment as our witness, In this report, I can say with experience that the Sasquatch is not included with any wildlife recognition course taught by the Canadian Army. Okay. But the survival and outdoor survival courses are extenuous. I know it nearly killed me half a dozen times. Oh, and here's where he hit me with the bombshell. My daughter was there, but she did not see it.
Yeah, kind of late in the report, but it's there.
Yeah. I said, was she at the riverbank with you and the dog? Answer. She was at the river bank. She was throwing rocks in the water. Question, you didn't try to draw her attention to it at all? She answered, no, I didn't know what it was. Question, how old was she at the time? She was 8, so she's just a little kid. And I think, and I suspect, assuming the story is factual, that maybe it was pay attention to her rather than him, but who knows? Question, what do you think it was? Answer, originally, I thought it looks like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot but at the same time, I thought they don't live here, being Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously our witness had no previous knowledge of Sasquatch reports on the east side of the Rocky Mountains. They're on the west coast, and I always thought this was his reported range and habitat. After a while, after I processed everything, it came to me that that's more likely what it was. Question, have any of your friends or family members ever made an incident like this before? No. Are you convinced that you saw a Sasquatch? Answer, right now, the more I process this, yes. Question, have you ever made a report like this to anyone before? No. Which was rather odd since he told Cliff Brackman, told the BFRO. Do you wish to remain confidential? Yes, just because of my work. The reason I haven't mentioned it to a lot of people is because of my profession and my family. I would like to remain confidential. That's why Alpha Victor will not be identified in this broadcast. Alpha Victor seems to me to be an individual who encountered something which he tried to find out more about, and for some time was disillusioned by the workings of a well-known hoaxer. I won't repeat the name. Todd Stanley. Fortunately,
you didn't repeat it.
He did end up talking to another researcher from the BFRO, whom did an investigation in the matter, though I'm a little surprised he did not mention filing a report to Cliff Brackman, whom brought this case to my attention in the first place. That's how I ended up contacting this witness. I remember when I was in Alberta, I looked into a few reports from this same general campground back in the 1980s. Also, there's a long history as it's all along the Bow River and near Banff National Park. Thomas Steenburg.
Well, Thomas, listening to the report, it threw a couple of curves at me for certain. And was it ever established, he said, we go camping, we were camping, who's we? Who was with him?
I'm taking his wife and daughter.
Was his wife with him?
No.
Obviously, now we find out the daughter on the tail end was with him, but the wife wasn't out on that walk with him.
No, not the wife. It was his daughter, him, and his dog. So he didn't mention to the very end of the interview that the daughter was even with him at the time. And as far as I know, he didn't mention that. In fact, I have a copy of what he wrote to the BFRO here, if you'd like to hear that.
Well, I was just wondering because I was trying to figure out why did he tell his dog to go with him, like, come on, let's go, and say nothing about the fact his daughter was down by the river throwing rocks in it.
I'm assuming the daughter was just at his side at the same time. That,
well, I know.
I don't believe this man was leaving his daughter as a sacrifice.
No. No, not at all. No, but it was
But
just some inconsistencies.
What is interesting is, according to him, maybe a different story now, because I've had this experience before with another case. He doesn't think the daughter saw it at all. He didn't draw the daughter's attention to it or saw it. And you may remember a case I did on the coast. We never thought the little girl saw it at all until years later. The little girl said, "What was that big monkey we were looking at that day?"
It seems like, there's a certain age at which a child turns into an observer, more observant of its surroundings, but still keeps its mouth shut, shall we say. Like they're more accepting in their own ways. It's after they get to be about 11, 12, 13-year-olds that, they're scared to death. But I think in this case, maybe the little girl did see it.
Yeah, maybe.
Did the alleged Sasquatch see her?
And when he took his eyes off it and turned to walk back with the dog, and he turned back to look at it again, he said, that's when it stood up and walked away. It's almost like it knew it's no longer looking at he's no longer looking at me. It's time for me to go. Just like what a rabbit would do. Yeah, but he did turn and he did see it get up and walk off. And I guess the creature, by the sound of what he described, wasn't aware of the fact that he was looking at it again. Yeah. So I know you asked the question. The tree line must have been rather close to the river embankment for it to disappear so quickly. Between 10 and 15 yards. That Bow Valley Campground is quite treed. It's quite a lovely little area. Yeah. And it's that's an interesting report, I must say. And I guess his military background kept him from breaking and getting out of there as fast as possible. It seemed like the Sasquatch blinked first. In fact, his daughter's there. Yeah. Yeah, it's wow. It would be curious to be able to talk to that daughter and say, "Do you remember a trip that you and your dad and mom took up to this park many years ago? And did you ever recall seeing anything strange?" As a matter of fact, now that I recall, I did mention in the report, I think it was just him and his daughter on this camping trip. His wife didn't come along. It was like daddy-daughter day. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. Yeah, they took the dog. Yeah. Well, I can see from the report that he sure got in contact with a number of people about it. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, Cliff and then the other BC investigator, BFRO. Yeah. And so it's well documented. Yeah. Okay, sir. That's great. Folks, you got to listen into the next one, because the next feature we're going to do, not today, but on the next program, next podcast, we're doing the Chronicle campground incident. Now, this is a famous story. It has all the air markings of a truthful account and a very compelling report as far as reports go. This is a multi-sighting, and all of the witnesses back each other up pretty good. And you're going to really enjoy it. I've gone through that, as probably quite a many of you have already. I've gone through that report a dozen times, and it still rings as truthful as the first time I read it. I can't find any real flaws in it. It's one of my favorites, and I think it'll be considered a Sasquatch classic one of these days. It should be right up there with Bowman and all the rest of them, I mean, Ape Canyon and most definitely. I know in the province of Alberta, the Sasquatch Field of Province of Alberta, a lot of the bighorn damage in 1969, this is considered the story of the province of Alberta. Yeah. And it makes me dang proud to be able to produce it onto something like this so people can hear you talk about it in your own terms instead of just answering questions. Give them the entire report and what was happening and your opinion and beliefs on the subject as an afterword, So
Hey, come on back for the next one, guys. You're going to really enjoy the Crandall Campground. Thomas, thank you again, sir, for your time and your efforts. And it's a real pleasure to do this show with you. And stick around, folks. There'll be much more, because after the Crandall Campground, then we're going to go for a little trek across the Rockies to BC. And we're going to be doing stories from BC. Yeah. So, okay, Thomas, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it, my friend. And
My pleasure.
we will talk again real soon. Okay, dear listener, that about wraps it up for now. My name is Jerry Matthews. You can reach me at yellowcoyote@talis.net. Thank you for your interest, and until the next time, keep searching.